This is called Silver Palace. It's a fairy tale detective game. We're gonna watch the gameplay trailer and talk about it. We're gonna watch the the plot teaser trailer and talk about that too. But this one's really interesting to me because it's an action adventure RPG, but it's also like a fairy tale detective game, and I feel like that's a mix I haven't really seen too much of. Definitely seen some live service detective games. We've seen some we've seen a lot of action RPGs. And this one's even open world, or I guess it might be better to call it open city, because I think we only see the city. Thought the art style was pretty interesting. They're going for something a little bit more Victorian. We've got the choice of 2 different detectives, and then they've also showcased 2 characters here. There are more characters in the trailer, and I've seen like some really tiny concepts, like really, like I'm talking like half an inch tall concepts for some other characters, and I actually found them quite intriguing, which was another thing. I'm usually not too into games that are 99% female. This one actually does look like it has a nice mix, so if they can pull this off, this is going to be a very, very cool game. Whoops. Hold on. I meant to click this one, and then my mouse skipped. My mouse would probably skip less if I used a mouse pad, but I don't. I use a piece of wood, because why wouldn't I? Now, I have watched this already, technically, so I've spoiled myself in a little bit, but it's a good thing. It's a good thing. I'm actually really excited about this. Okay, let's go. Literally one of the first characters that we see is actually a pretty unconventional anime male character. I just thought that was really cool, a cool way to open it. Got some really crazy environments. You can do the horseback riding. You can fly through the city on the horse. Obviously, you've got like the grappling rails and everything. The exploration looks really slick. So as far as I can tell, this game is based off of a detective who is solving fairy tale mysteries. Some of them might be murder mysteries, some of them might be whodunits or whatever. They're showcasing Cinderella in this one. I'm sure some of you picked up on that when the carriage busted through. Like, this is Cinderella in her horse-drawn carriage. And then right here, they were talking about how, like, the clock was striking 12. Cinderella turns from rags, or from riches to rags at the stroke of 12 and that kind of stuff. But it seems like they're going to really go for like the dark fairy tale theme. And a lot of fairy tales that we're familiar with are so wild. They're so different in their original form. So if they go with like the original versions, they could come up with some really interesting twists, I think. I think the one thing that's like really got me intrigued about the premise of it being primarily a detective game is that it looks like you could just be walking along the city and there aren't really random encounters per se. Different characters might be monsters in disguise. And then you have to identify which ones they are and which ones aren't. You have to be really detail oriented in order to make these mysteries actually mysterious and that kind of stuff. I have high hopes for the story for that reason. I love how animated and fluid these characters are, especially for Unreal 5. That's one of the reasons that this really caught my eye. Also, I just think that she has like a live beating heart on her back, and I think that's sick. I would assume maybe we'll be able to go to different cities. Like, this looks like it's underground, this whole area. So there must be a place you can go under the city, like a whole undercity mining facility or something. I don't actually know if there's spaces beyond the city. We only really see the city and city-related stuff. This game doesn't have loading screens. And I'm wondering if that's also because it's locked into a city, so you can actually control very tightly what's being drawn and what isn't. So you can kind of like load things dynamically. I'm very interested in the over-the-shoulder mechanic, or over-the-shoulder camera angle too. That's unusual. Looks like we're gonna have bounty hunting. And this is kind of what I mean by this game is gonna have to sort of live and die by its hunting mechanics. But that also means that if you're having to pay attention to NPCs, they have to put a lot of effort into making those NPCs look really good. I'm also trying to figure out, like, as I look at some of these characters, like, which fairy tale are you from? Or are you completely original? We've got horse customization. We can drift on the horses. So it focuses really heavily on a parry mechanic. You can swap between gun and melee, or melee and ranged. You see this silver stuff? Like, gives her this whole bracer and then she summons a sword with it. That's the same stuff that she summoned the horse with. As far as I know, it's called like Servanium or Silvarium, I think. And I guess that's like one of the main magical materials in this world. It's interesting because like liquid silver actually makes me think of mercury, which makes me think of alchemy, and I don't think that's quite what they're going for, but that's where my brain goes. So is a horse summonable? Yes, summonable, and it is apparently customizable. So it looks like what she's doing is she's hunting down individual targets in this like organization so that she can get to the Wolf King. And after you catch a certain amount of them, you can your way up. And there's like multiple different ways to go about it. Didn't notice any stamina bars at first glance when flying. Yeah, I don't think there are any, but I think that's also kind of by design. The reason why you would have stamina bars in a game is it really depends on like what you're trying to accomplish with them. In this case, like you're hunting things. So to have stamina when you're hunting would probably feel kind of bad. Stamina when you're exploring the world is a little bit more because like you want the feeling of accomplishment of like overcoming your limitations, but that's not quite the goal of the exploration in this game. Well, it's a new thing to add to the list of can you pet the cat? I can make the cat hover. It's so rare to find a game where a city actually feels like it is the size of a real city. The fact that the city is this big and they're able to just kind of like glide around it with no problem is just baffling to me. Yeah, see? No loading screens. I'm so impressed by no loading screens, man. I don't know. If it's gacha, it's likely free. I think it's a gacha game. I'm not entirely sure though. I know it's a live service game. Okay, this is one other detail I like. When a game has a lot of dialogue in it and it can't realistically voice all of the dialogue, the fact that some games go out of their way to record like a bunch of just little mini phrases, sighs, or giggles or anything like that, and they put those in the unvoiced dialogue, like that I feel like really helps you read the text in the character's voice. Me going on about little game mechanics while we're trying to strangle this guy. Yeah, there's stealth mechanics, and they actually look like they're really fleshed out. Like you can really come up behind these guys. Seems like there's some sort of elemental system. It does seem like there might be. I don't know what kind of impact that has on the actual gameplay. It's kind of hard to say at this point. And it's boss fight time! This is kind of what I meant when I said, like, the combination of everything they have going on here is, like, a very fascinating formula. The stealth mechanics, the action RPG, the hunting mechanics, and then the fact that if they're gonna pass it off as a detective game, they've absolutely got to hone in on, like, the detail within their writing, which means their writing actually has to be pretty tight. Like, that's a really difficult formula. If they can pull this off, this will be phenomenal. Oh, they even gave her glass shoes. Oh, that's cool. I'm gonna get so lost. I get so lost in cities, like you guys have no idea. I got lost in Chinatown in Toronto once. I took one wrong turn and then ended up staying in that area of Toronto for like 3 hours. And I went past the same buildings multiple times because I cannot find my way around cities. Okay, map. No, come back here. I want to look at the map. Come back here. Yow. Map. Okay. Oh, cool. We've got, this is like a big church sort of thing over here. We're zoomed in almost all the way. So this is a very big city. It's pretty detailed though. I love that it's hand drawn or like, you know, the aesthetic is hand drawn. This, I think, is that same church we just saw on the map. Little steeples over here. And it's got a cool black hole or something hovering over it. I love it. There are mysteries to be held. Beholded. To beholden? To be held. Maybe it's just behold. But the ending bit of the first trailer about how you are the author, perhaps each story is self-contained and concludes based on your choices until the new story is written by you. That is possible too. It could be that they do branching stories, but every story is self-contained. That would be kind of cool. It would be very difficult to go back and revisit those stories if they want to do them, go back and add to them over time. But I like that they're right from the start establishing a couple of things. The first is that we're going to focus on fairy tales, folklore, that kind of stuff. And we're going to approach them in the format of them being a written story or a book. And that book is tied to your destiny. And if you want your happily ever after, then we're probably going to have to rewrite your story. Look at this thing. Maybe that's not the church. Bunch of floating islands. if you do end up becoming the author, so to speak, right? It would be really cool if maybe every expansion, like you said, is like its own book. And maybe you have the ability to go to the library and you can enter books and fix the fairy tales. Or maybe you can just expand the world by like finding a new book, opening it up, and it adds like a whole new thing onto it. We get to analyze different NPCs, right? So smell of blood, obvious smell of perfume, avoid strong light, likely to be an enemy kind of thing. This makes me think we'll be able to like use our silver powers to manipulate objects in the overworld, perhaps pick them up, analyze them without having to disturb the crime scene, if you will. I just thought the aesthetic was really cool. The characters look really interesting. The environment is stellar, and I'm just absolutely fascinated by the combination of detective live service games in an action RPG open world city world. I'm looking forward to the beta. I really do want to test this out. I want to see how this camera angle feels when you play it, because it's very cinematic. I'm used to the camera being quite a bit farther out. It's quite rare, I feel like, to play games that aren't shooters, where you're this close to the back of the character. I actually really like the male main character. So I think I will be pre-registering. I definitely want to give this a test. Maid 49, clueless like determined girl who someone learned about the detective's kind nature and chose to stick around. She is blessed with zero common sense. Great! We love that in a detective assistant. Terrible housekeeping skills with those bullets, I would assume so. Situational unawareness. Oh, these are almost the same, but they're also not. We've got the raven's claws here, then the raven's beak here. I wonder what the difference is. That kind of puts their home screen in a slightly different light. Little raven right here. We've got our little detective. I don't know what this is supposed to be, but it's really cool looking. No, I was looking at this section here because it's like a silver throne. I wonder if the silver palace is just a reference to the fact that we're writing stuff. The dancer is a Cheshire cat. Oh, that would make sense. That would mean these aren't snake eyes, they're cat eyes. You couldn't find the game's website. I did put the link in the description. Like I said, I had a hard time finding it as well. I think part of it is just because all the news articles that are out about the game right now have kind of been blowing it up, and they're taking over all of the search results. I think I can pin it. There we go. I did it. I did it. Look at me doing things. All right. I would assume it's not coming out this year. I would assume it would come out like midway through 2026, but there are no official anythings on that. Pitched the idea to me. I was like, that is fascinating. That was a harpy she just snapped the neck of. Goodness, this game's going to come with a decently high age rating, I think. This is such a cool shot with the city coming in together and then the book. That is cool. Yeah, so let me, if you guys have any additional thoughts that you didn't get to share in chat today, put them in the comments, because I'm kind of interested to see what you guys think about this game going forward. I'm pretty excited about it, honestly. The premise is interesting. I think they could go a lot of places with it, and it's pretty flexible. So if you're interested, you gotta go click this button, this big old pre-register button.